So, guys, we talked a little bit about how Ezra Miller was a little bit of a degenerate when it comes to the ladies. But guess what? There's someone new that we can point fingers at, and his name is Neil Gaiman. And it has coming out recently about charges of abuse. Up to 9 women have come forward to talk about some very disturbing behavior by the guy who, by all accounts, is the premier male feminist out there.
And chose to take that photograph.
Yes, and pushing his
somebody passed the butter.
So, guys,
I'm shocked that the liberal feminist is a sexual predator. I'm shocked.
Well, guys,
allegedly.
So can you take the creepiest photo possible?
Yeah, for real, dude. Yeah, look at that. He looks like
he okayed that
with hair.
Yeah, he's an artiste.
Guys, this Vulture article, which is linked in the description, this is actually like probably one of the best articles I've read in a long time. And it goes in depth into all the accusations, these women who are coming forward. They're actually breaking NDAs coming forward, talking about their experiences with Neil Gaiman. It goes in depth into his kind of relationship with his wife or ex-wife, Amanda Palmer, and her role, because she's an outspoken feminist, but she seems to have been covering up a lot of like his bad behavior.
Shocker.
And this kind of goes part and parcel with like the whole like quote unquote male feminist thing, where you had like Joss Whedon, right? Where he was like, oh, I'm a male feminist. I'm all about, supporting women and stuff like that. Turns out he was a lech, and basically he got canceled because of all this stuff. And when you hear the term male feminist, it's basically just an excuse. It's a shield, much like Brian is a shield for our show where we can talk about anything we want. That's right. Because, he's queer, he's here, he's non-binary.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But when someone says they're a male feminist, that's basically just a shield that they use to mask their terrible behavior. Now, I'm not going to go into detail into all the nitty gritty behind like what he did, because some of it's like truly like disturbing and disgusting. But the overview here is basically Neil Gaiman grew up in an abusive Scientology household. He then became famous for his Sandman comic books, which led into novels, which have been, adapted by Hollywood. And so he became very rich, and he, by all accounts, got into a BDSM lifestyle, which is basically bondage, discipline, sadomasochism. And the thing about BDSM lifestyles, apparently, according to this article, is that they're all based around consent between the two parties involved. But with Neil Gaiman, he had this whole master-slave complex, and so like he didn't care about consent. And so a lot of these times with these women that are accusing him, he basically just sexually assaulted them, essentially, according to them, allegedly. And his attorneys who are defending him on this are basically saying like, yeah, this happened, but it was between 2 consenting adults in a BDSM relationship, and that's not illegal, right? And so basically, there's a part in this article where the main girl who's making this allegation has a talk with Amanda Palmer, who's his ex-wife, and she's like a musician, and she's very big on Patreon and stuff like that. And she says that, she talks about the experiences that she had with Neil, and Amanda Palmer says like, oh, you're one of 18 women who've come to me about this, and like, I'll handle it for you. And so like, basically she like this feminist, like musical icon is part and parcel responsible for, his bad behavior. It's kind of like Leslie Headland with Harvey Weinstein and stuff like that. And, but the crazy thing about this story is there's no fallout from it. And it's because Neil Gaiman has like his, he's on the right side of the political aisle when it comes to this type of stuff. Like when Russell Brand got accused of something far, far less disgusting than what, is being levied at Neil Gaiman, like people actively tried to destroy his career. When it comes to Neil Gaiman, it's just like, oh, Amazon replaced him as the showrunner for the finale of Good Omens. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Like the story isn't being circulated wide and far like it was with Harvey Weinstein. So you have a situation here where basically Neil Gaiman, who's a male feminist, is pretty much going to get away with mistreating all these women. And it's pretty disgusting. We've seen this in the past with people like Roman Polanski and stuff like that, where basically Hollywood is okay with bad behavior as long as, you know, you're in the right cocktail circuit. And so I just want to have like a you know, kind of honest discussion about this. I'm going to start with Reaper. You know, even though Neil Gaiman isn't, you know, from like he's not British, but you know, he grew up in the UK, and so like a lot of people think he's British, and they're looking at him as like, oh, this is just another example of like, you know,
that's just us Brits.
Yeah,
BDSM, unconsensual rape. That's just the UK.
exactly.
Yeah, where was that line of thought going?
Oh, quirky Neil. He gets that from us.
Yeah. So Reaper,
No,
what's
like,
your take on this?
Well, what did the women think when you were talking to his wife? Going, yeah, your husband just sexually assaulted me. Can you do something about him? Put him in the corner. Take his money from him. Go with the police. Did they actually go with the police? I'm not 100% sure. But I don't get the whole talk. I think the talking to his wife was probably a hush money.
So they did go to the police, but the police said that unless his wife could corroborate what they said, there was no case there, and so a lot of these police complaints got dismissed as case closed.
See, I thought if they just went to his wife, I'd go, "Why would you do that?" That would be just a weird thing to do, but that makes sense.
Well, oftentimes his wife was responsible for.
Well, and didn't like 2 or 3 of the girls did go to the police, but then there was payoffs and NDAs and all that other stuff. That's kind of the thing.
Oh, okay.
And here's the other thing too, and here's the problem with this whole situation. Do I think that personally? Do I think Gaiman's guilty of some of this stuff? Yes, but I also feel like some of these women facilitated this, because if you even read, and I'm not trying to victim blame, but if you read through the whole thing, the one victim doesn't even say no until some of the most horrific acts are already over. And then she still is in a relationship with the guy. And I get it. It's a complicated mess. And it's really strange, because this is the same thing with like the Harvey Weinstein case. Because I read through the whole case and I'm like, do I think he's guilty of a lot of stuff that people are saying? Oh, fuck yes. But reading through this case, I don't know how the hell he got convicted of anything, because a lot of it was hearsay. And when you're in a relationship with somebody, it's very tough to prove assault without any sort of physical evidence whatsoever, whether it's you go to the doctor right after the assault happens, whether there's a text message exchange between the two of you. And that's the problem, is it doesn't sound like anything really supports this girl's story outside of a few things. And some of the other stories I don't know all the specifics of, but then his dumb ass comes out and puts out the fucking statement where he confirms some of it and then he denies some of it, but doesn't specify which, right? And then he apologizes for bad behavior. And it's like, well, once you do that, you've basically owned this shit, Gaiman, right? At that point. And you've got all these NDAs and other things out there that really kind of make the whole thing look messy as hell. And again, so I think you've got him taking advantage of vulnerable women. You've got women taking advantage of the fact that they get to hang out with this guy. The one girl was more enamored with Amanda Palmer than anybody. So that's the other weird wrinkle in this mess, because it even gets people like Xena Warrior Princess involved. I don't know if you guys heard about this, because Amanda was with what's her face, the chick who plays her,
Lucy Lawless.
Lucy Lawless, when she met one of these girls. And so like, this is just a weird thing that has been going on for years. And honestly, the whole thing just stinks to high heaven, because there's been payouts already, there's been NDAs, and it's like all of a sudden now you guys are all deciding to cancel this guy. And I have no love for Neil Gaiman. I could give a shit. I've never read any of his books. I don't care, right? I think he's one of the OG emos, right? Like, to me, that's what he is. So if women find that shit attractive, that's their own fault. If they get involved in this shit, look, say no and leave. Like, the motherfucker has a bathtub in his backyard, not a jacuzzi, a fucking bathtub. And there's pictures of it. All right. And I'm sitting here looking at it going, where's the plumbing for this fucking thing? Apologize for the language, but I mean, it's like, all right, if that wasn't enough for you to say, all right, peace, I'm out, Mr. Gaiman, then honestly, after whatever happens after that point, you kind of signed up for it. That's what I feel like. And I'm not trying to victim shame, but at the same time, Gaiman's a depraved, perverted freak. We know this from his work, right? It's some of the most artistic people in the world. Guess what? They're the freakiest. That's just the way it is. Motherfucker's got an obsession with butter. We don't even want to get into specifics with this shit here. This shit is so nasty.
Man, it's like those people who get in a relationship with freaking like Marilyn Manson.
Right.
And they're like, oh, he was such a weird.
He was such a weirdo. It's like,
he was such a weirdo.
it's Marilyn fucking Manson.
No, really?
Really? Did you think he was going to be like Pee Wee Herman? Bad example, but still.
Well, what's interesting here is that no criminal charges have been brought against Neil Gaiman, but
Right.
This was an in-depth investigation where like they found like a bunch of women who didn't know each other and independently have like all these like kind of like patterns of behavior for him and like things that he makes them say and things that he makes them do. And he uses his money as leverage to basically kind of like force these women into these situations where he has sex with them, allegedly. And I just want to read you guys what his representatives said about this. He said that Neil Gaiman's official position is that sexual degradation, bondage, domination, sadism, and masochism may not be to everyone's taste, but between consenting adults, BDSM is lawful. So I want to ask you, Odin, just,
Of course.
Yeah, Odin the Christian. What do you
Now
think
that
of
I've given you that description of his sexual preferences, let me ask you your thoughts on the matter.
Well, no, not about his preferences, but
What do you feel about butter, Odin?
Are you pro butter, Odin? But here's the thing I want to ask you. So like you have this obviously like dangerous kind of like bad behavior, and Hollywood's just kind of cool with it, and it's because Neil Gaiman, he goes to the right cocktail parties, he has the right politics. What does it take for Hollywood to actually like punish people for their behavior, do you think?
I mean, it takes, honestly, the worst crimes imaginable that are publicly known and proven. Basically, like, had there been actual evidence of anything that this guy had done with like kids, like especially nowadays where I feel like the general public is a lot more sensitive to that kind of stuff, I think that might have been enough to at the very least put him on like that list. But even then, right, with Hollywood, it doesn't take them very long often, even in those cases, to make the path of redemption very easy for them.
I don't know if you read this in the article or not, but there were situations where he had his kid in the room when he was doing things to these women.
why?
And that's again, I hate that I even have to put it this way, but like that just shows you like just how depraved Hollywood is, because that is not really what is at all getting out. Like mostly what I'm saying is that if it had been that the victim was that, I personally think that makes that child a victim, because that child has now been scarred for life. And it's just, again, to me, even more so than anything else, I don't think there's ever going to be anything that's going to have them hold each other accountable unless we hold them accountable. Like that's really what it comes down to. They're not going to do anything unless we, the audience, the people, actually do something, actually say something, actually try to bring, real change about, because they're so depraved. And I mean, this is something that unfortunately has just really pervaded Hollywood since almost its entire inception, where there's always been a lot of these problems and issues, right? If you look at, for instance, broken marriages, like the highest percentage of broken marriages you'll ever find is in Hollywood. If you look at almost anything,
and
right?
open marriages too.
Open marriages, right? And then as you get along, as things get further advanced and further along, right? Especially after the sexual revolution, now anything, especially when it comes to sexual depravity, you're always going to find the highest concentration of it in Hollywood. So there's just something about the business and about the industry that either brings those people in or warps those people into those kinds of persons. It's really hard to say which one is which. Maybe it's a little bit of both. But it honestly is just kind of crazy, because it kind of just reminds me a little bit of, and obviously not the same at all, Neil Gaiman and a lot of the other people that we could probably think of. But the one that comes up in my mind is the situation of James Gunn, right? Where he said a lot of really weird jokes that involved, mentioning like kids. And
PDF
at one
files.
point, at one point he actually dressed as a priest and went to a party like as a pedophile priest. And it was just like, okay, there's a lot of things that I think are honestly just so depraved about Hollywood. It makes them deserve all of the prayers in the world for their conversion, because there needs to be I think Father Chad Ripperger, who's a well-known exorcist, needs to go throughout all of Hollywood, all the studios, and just exorcise the demons, because it's bad.
Well, speaking of open marriages and stuff like that, Brian, not that you're in an open marriage.
Wow.
You
gotta
know,
work on your segues, bro.
Neil Gaiman's wife, Amanda Palmer, when they first got together, they were in an open relationship. They actively encouraged each other to have affairs when they were like away from each other. And Amanda Palmer she's bisexual. She would pick up other women, and then she would kind of like, once she was done with them, she would feed them to her husband. Essentially, she'd like, kind of like provide him
like piranhas.
Yeah, pretty much. She'd provide him like new sexual
Like
partners.
Leslie Headland.
Exactly. And the crazy thing about this is that both her and Neil Gaiman have all been kind of like praised as examples of like feminists, like people putting women first and stuff like that. But I'd highly encourage people to read this article because like it goes so in depth into like everything wrong with like Hollywood and celebrities and stuff like that nowadays. But the reason that a lot of people are saying that this stuff is coming out now is because Amanda Palmer and Neil Gaiman are in the middle of a very contentious divorce. And basically Amanda Palmer has been bankrupted by this divorce and fighting him. And so what she's trying to do is trying to bring these allegations to light as a pressure tactic in order to get him to kind of like, give her some of like the money and property and stuff like that he owns. So what's your take on this whole thing?
I don't have much of a take, bro. I didn't even know who that person was until today. So sounds like he is a douchebag. But I don't know. I do know that Hollywood is, in Odin's right, just rife with depravity over depravity. And you only see the surface stuff. We don't ever really see how bad it really is. I wouldn't be surprised if like well-known names that we knew were just into the same exact stuff. They just haven't gotten out yet. So I don't have much of an opinion because I don't know the guy, but I am disgusted by his actions or alleged actions.
Well, Alex, what's crazy about this is that as Neil Gaiman was kind of like gaining celebrity and renown through like comic books and novels and stuff like that, a lot of his quote unquote alleged victims were basically fans of his, and he'd go to like all these like fan events and like these award shows and stuff like that. And young girls who were like super into his stuff would like run up to him and like, basically throw themselves at him. And so like he'd start, kind of preying on people, some as young as 18. And like, technically he never broke a law, and all this stuff, but he rode that line on there. And this is something that we actually see from a lot of people in Hollywood. Like, you have Puff Daddy, you have like, all these examples of celebrities who were like kind of like in a protected class that get exposed for bad behavior, but then like they don't really pay any consequences for it. So what's your take on that?
It's because they all work for the CIA, and it's all just a blackmail tactic to get rich and famous people to do what they want. And to, I'm sorry, did you want the truth, or do you want me to just be like, oh, I think this guy's a piece of shit? Yeah, no shit.
You're turning the fucking Bronx gang.
It's because they're all freaking in the same club. They're like, oh, we all need to go support
Adrenochrome.
We all need to support the latest freaking Democratic president because we're all freaking compromised with all this blackmail. We're all a bunch of freaks. Man. Like, dude.
Come on, man. Give me some of that Adrenochrome, please, man.
It's all part of the same club, dude. Yeah. They're all freaking freaks.
Corn Pop used to suck the blood out of small children, too.
You think it's a lie? It's not. It's real. it's not even a conspiracy anymore. It's just this thing that everybody knows. I don't know. It's absolutely horrendously ridiculous, and it makes me I kind of understand why Dutch Butters faked his own death at this point. Because I don't want to talk about this shit at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. This is terrible.
I guess you're just QAnon adjacent now.
You say what you want, bro. That shit's real. They tell you what they do. They make movies with these horrendous scenes in it. You go watch Mother with Jennifer Lawrence, and they're like, why are they eating a baby in that movie? Because they're telling you what they do in Hollywood. You're like, this is the shit that we do. This is how you get into the club, guys.
I will fight against that.
Matt, if you wanted this to be a monetized stream.
I was going to say, I'll fight against that only to make this point. It was not to say that. It was to, I think, mock Catholics. because as
Or
Catholics we
that.
believe to consume the
Oh,
body and
because-
blood of Christ, and so I think that was
because-
actually what his intention was to mock
Because
it.
you're allowed to make fun of that religion.
Oh, you're
only.
allowed to make
Yep.
fun of Christians.
You
Yeah,
can't,
yeah.
you
Yep.
can't make fun of
Just
any
no
other
other
religion.
no
only.
other religion.
Just
Yep.
Christians. I
Just
wonder why
Christians.
that is. Maybe it's because there are a bunch of crazy demonistic freaking worshiping psychopaths who run the entire town. Maybe that's why they hate
Maybe
God.
that's
I
why.
don't know.
Maybe it's because you hate Christians because they're
a little too
coming
close
for
to
you.
home.
Jesus Christ, man! What is
I want
this
to see
topic?
I want to see
Literally.
a 2-hour live stream of just Alex just talking about this kind of stuff every Sunday night at like 2 in the morning. So,
You
sort
just
of
see
like
his-
the coast to coast
Bro.
show.
His
Alex
soul
Coast to
slowly
Coast.
is just getting sucked out of him as he has to talk about these topics every time.
What is this? I started this podcast because I liked movies. I don't think I like movies anymore, man.